Thank you guys for coming back to listen to another episode. I am so excited to talk to, I feel like one of my internet friends. Like, I feel like we talk all the time on Instagram. So I'm excited to talk to you for real. Hi, Stacey.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's good to actually see you in person and talk to you,
Right.
not on Instagram.
Right. It's cool.
But we went to
So
high school together though, too.
we did, but I don't think we ever like spoke to each other, did we?
No, I think because you're a year younger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we wouldn't have had class or anything.
Yeah. And it's so weird. There's a couple of people we went to high school with that I didn't see or talk to in high school, but I feel like I know them now.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
the same way.
Right. So, can you describe yourself for the listeners a little bit? What do you do for work? What do you do for fun?
Okay. This question is always so difficult, but I'm glad that you framed it this way because it makes it easier to answer. Okay, so I'll start with work. So I work on a government contract like everyone else in the DMV area. I'm currently working on supporting an FAA contract. That's Federal Aviation Administration for people who don't know. And I'm in their technical training division. I'm also currently finishing up my master's at American University. So that's exciting. I don't work in my field at all, but hopefully once I get my degree, I will. Um, for fun, I like doing a lot of things. Baking. I also have a baking Instagram, which I rarely post on, but still love it.
Mhm.
Watching TV, movies, reading, listening to podcasts, traveling, which unfortunately we can't do right now. Yeah, I'll keep it short.
Yeah. What are you getting your master's in?
Oh yeah, I didn't mention that. My master's is in international relations, and I have a focus in international negotiation and conflict resolution. It's a mouthful.
Cool. Do you want
Yeah.
to stay in the government? Like, would you want to work for the State Department?
I would love to work for the State Department in some facility or work for the UN or some organization of that sort, but we'll see.
Yeah, that would be so cool. Okay, let's stop talking about work. Boring. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so I wanted to have you on because I've seen you post on your Instagram story a lot about criticisms of the church. We'll probably use that term a lot during this conversation. And when I say that, I kind of mean the church, how it functions in the US. I can't really speak on what the church's presence is like anywhere else. But I've seen a lot of healthy criticism from you of the church, and I'm curious where it came from and what your past is like with it. So, can you describe kind of your upbringing with religion and your involvement with church in the past?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually can give cultural perspective as well because my family's Ghanaian. I was born in Ghana, raised Ghanaian American. And at least for myself and my family, church has always been a part of my life. I grew up in the church. We went to church every Sunday. So I was very ingrained in church culture, but it was always difficult for me. I always felt like there were things I didn't really understand or agree with, but I couldn't really ask questions, or it seemed like, oh, you're causing rebellion or this and that. Um, and so after I graduated high school and went to college, I actually left the church that I grew up in and started going to a different church. And honestly, it was more of the same. It, again, it was like if you asked questions or had a differing opinion, it was taught to be rebellious or divisive. And that really wasn't my intention. I'm someone who wants to understand things. So I ask a lot of questions, and I'm not going to do things just because someone says it's what to do. But I felt a lot of that in my life with church, I guess you could say. So that's a little bit of the background context.
Yeah, that's I it's interesting to hear you bring up the point of feeling like you couldn't question things. I went to Christian school for almost all of elementary school, except for third grade. And then I went back to private school. But yeah, it was weird. But there was definitely um, no room to question, especially just like the existence of God. I remember in class, a girl asked, like, how do we know God is real? And our teacher was like, what do you mean? We know God is real because of his miracles. And she was like,
Yeah.
okay, but like, really, how do we know? And she shut her down, and there was no room to, explore whether or not you believe it or why you believe it, which I think ultimately makes your belief stronger when you do challenge your own beliefs. Um, but yeah, I think it sucks that kids are just kind of indoctrinated a little bit and they don't get a chance to question or, doubt at all.
Yeah. And then I feel like it just brings up so many issues of people just like blindly doing things and then hurting people because that's what my mom did. That's what the pastor said, this, that, and the third. And you don't actually know, and you're not encouraged to see another side. So it's rough.
Yeah. So, do you still go to church today?
No, I do not. I cut ties with the church, I believe in 2019. It just, I just got to the point where I realized that I was doing these things not because I wanted to have a relationship with God and because I loved Him, but because I wanted people to leave me alone and not judge me. And I feel like if that's the reason, it's not a good one. So,
Right.
nope, I don't go to church anymore, but I still do believe in God. I still have a relationship with God. And I believe that you don't need to be a part of a church to do that.
Right. Do you identify as Christian?
I wouldn't say that because there's a lot of things that I don't necessarily believe or agree with. And so for that reason, I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that I'm a Christian. Um, but I do also believe in a lot of the Christian principles as well, like
Yeah.
loving people, being kind, all those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, I have struggled with the label of Christian as well. It's difficult because I think most of the Bible isn't that bad. I do
Yeah.
feel like non-Christian people or non-believers at all, I think a lot of their criticisms of Christianity are valid. That they are like a very, very small part of the Bible. But I do think calling yourself a Christian or calling myself a Christian can associate myself with beliefs that I don't agree with. And I think that the way Christians are perceived right now, um, it's kind of negative, and I do think some of it, a lot of it, is warranted, uh, because they do believe that stuff. And I don't necessarily want to say I'm a Christian, and people assume that I'm a homophobe or that I uh, don't believe in reproductive rights for women or other rights for women,
Mhm.
beyond just abortion. So yeah, it's a tough label to feel comfortable with.
Yeah, it's really difficult. For me, I just feel like there are a lot of things that we hear that Christians are supposed to do. There's a lot of ways that we hear that Christians are supposed to act, right? And so I don't want someone to look at my life and be like, well, this is the example I have, and it not necessarily be right. I just wouldn't want to do that. So
Yeah. Um, so you kind of said you've always had iffy feelings about church and religion. Was there like a final straw that made you want to leave the church for good?
I would say it was a buildup of a lot of things. But significantly after I moved back home from college, another thing people don't talk about after you graduate is the depression that you go into. You've been somewhere for 4 years, you're coming back home trying to figure everything out. And so I felt very depressed and very lost. And I remember reaching out to the community for help, and it kind of being insinuated that I was making things up for attention, that the mental health things I was going through weren't real, um, even though I was seeing a doctor and have been medicated for the things that were going on and things of that nature. And it was very much so like, you don't have enough faith. You are making these things up. You just need to do this. You just need to do that. And there was a situation that I was involved in that it just really opened my eyes to see that just because people say they're a Christian and just because they go to church, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a good person. Um, and I experienced a lot of just like love and support, more so from people who are outside of the Christian community. And so when I really just reflected and took a look at my life and what I was doing, I just felt like I wasn't in it for the right reasons anymore. And I just needed to separate, but it was hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. I stopped going to church before in high school. Like I switched to public school in middle school
Mhm.
and I went with my family, maybe not every Sunday. And by like freshman year of high school, I was like, I don't want to go anymore. And I really appreciate my mom for not forcing me to go. When I said I didn't want to go anymore, she was like, fine.
Yeah.
Um, and then when I kind of started getting back into learning about the Bible as an adult, kind of towards the end of college and after college, I still don't feel comfortable in church. Like,
Yeah.
especially like Sunday church, like with hundreds of people. I'm an introvert and I don't like being around big groups of people. Like, the more people that are there, the more I feel uncomfortable. And that doesn't go away just because I'm at church.
Yeah.
Um, and so I have felt like, is this wrong? Like, is my relationship with God not as good because I'm not having fun in this church setting right now? I don't mind Bible study as much. I feel like Bible study works for me more because I don't feel like they're putting on as much. I don't feel like people are being fake as much during Bible study than they are at church. And yeah, it's hard to get into it. It wasn't hard for me to leave, but I also wasn't an adult. But I definitely getting back into it. I do feel like I'm doing something wrong because I don't like it. Um, so how did your family and friends respond to you leaving church?
Um, so I had grappled with the decision for a year before I finally decided to part ways with the church that I was a part of. And a lot of people knew what had happened and the issue. And so when I did talk to people, they understood where I was coming from. Some didn't necessarily agree, and some did try and talk me out of it, but a lot of them were very supportive of my decision, which I'm really grateful for because I know that that's not the case for a lot of people. People cut them off and stop speaking to them and all of that. So I'm grateful that my experience was different. In terms of my family, obviously I grew up Christian, so my mom, it was difficult for her. She didn't understand it and she still doesn't agree. But I tried to explain it to her as best as I could. And she also understands that I'm an adult. Sorry, that's my work computer.
It's
um,
okay.
but yeah, so overall, it was positive, and most of my friends were like, we don't care. Like, you're still our friend. We still love you anyway. So I'm grateful that I had mostly a positive experience.
Yeah, that's great. So what critiques, I guess, would you have for religion as it works today, so specifically Christianity and the church?
Honestly, my experience has mostly been that they've kind of lost sight about what the church was designed for. They've lost sight of the bigger picture, which is we're supposed to be trying to help people get to heaven, have a good relationship with God. And I feel like it's become more about legalism and control and making robots. And you can't say that you want people to come as they are and you'll love them and do this and then bait and switch. And I feel like that's a lot of my experience. That's a lot of other people around my age's experience. I've had several friends who have also since left church, not only the church that I was a part of, but other churches too. And that is a big reason why.
Yeah, my feelings about church sometimes, at least their presence and the way that they present themselves. If you're supposed to be kind of an extension of God and doing the work that Jesus sent us all to do here on earth, because he's up there and we're supposed to be doing, the Lord's work technically,
Yeah.
right? I don't feel like that's being done. But I'm also not like super plugged into church culture. But in general, the way that I feel like churches come off to other people is just like, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. Jesus wants you to be like this. And I'm like, sure, but you could represent the Lord and churches better through your actions versus telling everybody else what they should or shouldn't be doing. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Like, I think you would give Christianity a much better name and a much better reputation from helping people, from housing people, clothing people, feeding people, versus preaching at people who didn't ask for your advice in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. I wholeheartedly agree. At the end of the day, it's about like what's in your heart and who you are when you're outside of that building. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, a lot of people put on this front and then they treat people poorly. They're doing stuff that is disrespectful or hurtful to others and not really being open about it or being willing to be open. And then when other people are open about the things that they go through, it becomes a bashing session. And I just don't think that's right or fair.
Right. I will say I feel like a lot of the individuals that I've met, especially around our age, are perfectly lovely people. Like they don't seem terrible.
Yeah.
But I do feel like some of the leaders and older people and maybe more old school Christians are not doing a great job. I just don't think if the goal is to bring more people to know Christ, the way that you're presenting yourself, not you, but the way that they're presenting themselves, I wouldn't be interested. If I was a person who wasn't raised in Christianity, I would be like, ugh, and I want to be like you. Why? You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
I think too, this day and age that we're in, we're learning more just as human beings. We're trying to be more understanding. And a lot of the older generation is more set in their ways and don't really want to change, unfortunately. And that's another big issue. I know a lot. One verse that people like to use a lot is like, the word of God is like the same yesterday, today, and forever, this, that, and the third. And I can understand that to an extent, but you can't use that as a basis for like treating people of the LGBTQIA community poorly or taking away women's rights and things of that sort. You can't, that's not where we are anymore. And I don't think that Jesus would agree either with any of that. So
Right.
I just find it interesting that people pick and choose what they want to be the gospel for their church, their community, um, and then don't want to be open to newer ways of thinking.
Yeah. It reminds me so much of like very conservative political people who are like fundamentalist with the Constitution. And I'm like, okay, but that was written hundreds of years ago. The world was a completely different place. You and me would have been in a field somewhere. Obviously, things are different, so we can interpret the words a little bit differently. And I do think the way that we interpret the Bible is interesting to me because I'm like, all of it's up for interpretation.
Yeah,
How is this part really strict and that's exactly what God meant, but this is, that's not what he meant anymore.
no, he
That
meant
wasn't for
that
us.
has passed. And that's another thing too. The Bible has been translated thousands of times. Like we don't even know if what is in there is accurate because it was translated into hundreds of different languages, and interpretations get changed, things like that. So you can't really be sure. And so to tell someone no, your interpretation is wrong is just kind of like asinine to me, because all of it is an interpretation, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot to me to do the mental gymnastics of I'm sticking to the rules, but I'm interpreting when I don't like it. And some people would say that that's what I guess more progressive Christians are doing, but that's what everyone's doing. If
yeah,
you can
exactly.
add nuance to the parts that you don't like, then you can add nuance to all of it. So,
Yeah.
do you think that the way the church is currently functioning in the US is beyond repair?
I don't think that anything is beyond repair, but change involves taking responsibility and doing the work to get to a better place, right? Um, and with the church, people like to say, oh, it's not political, it's different. It's political. It really is. And there's a lot of legalism, and a lot of people benefit from that. So if you're benefiting from that, why would you want to change the way that things are? So, and that's not to say that every church is like that, because I know that there are some churches who are doing a great job of trying to be more understanding and trying to show people God. Um, but the majority don't. So I don't think it's beyond repair, but I do think that the majority of churches will not do the work to change.
Yeah, I I agree. I hope there will be some changes, but I don't think a lot of the more progressive, forward-thinking, new interpretation people are going to get catapulted to leading churches. and like making a big difference. And there was another thing you said that I do feel like if Jesus were here, all of the groups of people that a lot of Christians are like, you're wrong, you're doing this wrong, Jesus would be friends with them. And I do
Mhm.
feel like he would be, yes, he would be teaching them about the word. I also think he would be leading, with his life, showing them
Mhm.
how good Christianity is and why they should want to be a part of it through his actions and not
Yeah.
just through, well, Ephesians 1:5 says this. You know what I mean? Like,
And not even like how good Christianity is, but just like
right.
how look
How
how
good
good
he is.
God is. Like look
Yeah.
how good your life can be from loving people and wanting to be on the right path. Um and yeah, I think I agree a lot. It's kind of like the people who say they're Christians are the Pharisees, but the rebels are really the ones that Jesus would be a part of because he was a rebel. He challenged the norms. And it's just interesting that
Right.
people claim to want to proclaim that and profess that, but yet they're doing the opposite.
Yeah. So a lot of people our age, I know or have seen a lot of people our age who are super religious and who hold on to the old school way of thinking on a lot of things. And I've seen those same people criticize a lot of the popular millennial pastors like Stephen Furtick and Mike Todd. Do you think that those pastors are helping or hurting the Christian community?
I don't know who Mike Todd is. I've never seen a sermon by
What?
him. But
Really?
Stephen
He
Furtick.
Transformation Church, he wrote relationship goals.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not really familiar with him, I don't think. But Stephen Furtick, I've seen a lot of his sermons and I really like the stuff that he talks about. It's accurate. He's not making things up. I don't understand the problem, but maybe it's just because he's young and he's doing things a different way, and when you do things a different way people don't like that when they're used to something. So I don't think that they're hurtful. I think that they're helpful. And the point of church, the point of having a relationship with God is for everyone to have open access. So
Yeah,
I like
you like
Stephen
them.
Furtick.
Well, him, yeah. Mike Todd, like his church a lot. I think the only criticism I would have of him is they're a big church, they make a lot of money, and his sermons have a lot of frills, like a lot of props, a lot of stuff going on the screen behind him. And I'm like, I feel
Need
like you
all
could
that.
get this same message across without spending this much money
Mhm.
on just the sermons. But I do think that both of them interest people who probably had negative perceptions of church before. They're both usually preaching in like jeans and casual clothing. And I don't watch Stephen Furtick as much anymore, but I know Mike Todd is referring to the Bible, like he is using Bible verses to back up everything that he's saying. Like you said with Stephen Furtick, he's not making stuff up. And he's relaying the message in a way that's exciting and interesting and doesn't make me want to fall asleep
Yeah.
like some messages I went to as a kid. So I don't really see the harm or why people hate on them so much, other than if you just hate really rich pastors, which I mean, I get it. I think that criticism is healthy, but just them being fun, I don't see why that's a bad thing.
Yeah. I think the monetary aspect of it, that's a different issue, and that I can understand. If people are making stuff up and blatantly leading people astray, then that's problematic and that's not great. But I don't really see him doing that. Um, and there's a couple other people, like Preston and Jackie Hill Perry. They're more, you roll your eyes. I think for the most part, like she speaks the truth, but people judge them because like they're young and they have tattoos and she has dreads and this and that and she doesn't look the way a Christian should, which what does that even mean? um there's I feel like there's no right or wrong way to have a relationship with God if that's what you want to do and you're genuine about it and you care.
Mhm.
So
Definitely.
that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. I guess I don't, okay, to be fair, I don't know a whole lot about her. When I did the episode with Shaheem and his boyfriend, um, somebody made the point to me that I don't really know much about her. And maybe that's true. But I have seen her video about how she prayed the gay away or whatever. And I was not interested from then. But
Yeah, she made a decision, and if that's what God called you to do, if that's how you feel, that's fine. But I don't necessarily believe that that's the same path that everyone has to follow. I personally don't feel like just because you're attracted to the same sex or multiple different genders or sexes or whatever, you should immediately go to hell for that. I don't agree. And I don't think anyone should have the power to say that to another person. Um, if you know in your heart that you're living to serve God and you're not hurting anyone and you're being a good person and trying to better yourself every day, I think that's more of what matters. But a lot of people disagree with that, and that's fine.
yeah, I don't get it. I can't bring myself to do it.
Mhm.
I've definitely had debates with multiple people about whether or not Christianity is like inherently homophobic, and I'm like, how can you argue that it's not? People don't want to put that label of homophobe on themselves because it doesn't sound nice,
Mhm.
but if that's what you are, that's what you are. Like if you believe that somebody is going to hell because they're gay, you're a homophobe. Accept it or change your
Yeah.
beliefs.
Also, the translation. So when I did spend a lot of time in churches, I spent a lot of time like analyzing the word and looking at the meaning of things, like the original meaning. And a lot of the verses that people use, um, that's not necessarily what it's translated as. Like there's a verse that talks about like how like men who have sex with men like shall not inherit the kingdom of heaven or whatever. And it's talking about like adult men who have sex with children, so it's like pedophilia, not homosexuality. um but again, like people take things and run with it. My main point is these things have been translated in a way that fits a certain norm. And if you don't know the original, I just encourage people to take their time to do their research and be open to seeing that maybe what you thought isn't necessarily what the truth is. That's all I'm saying.
Right. Yeah. Will they do that? Who knows? But
That's between them and the Lord.
right. I'm curious how you feel about the combination of different spiritual practices with Christianity. I've seen a lot more people, you know, using crystals and praying to God or burning sage, but also praising the Lord. And I'm just curious on your thoughts on the combination of different things with Christianity.
Yeah, I have always felt like it's fine as long as you're not like worshiping the crystal or like, doing spells to harm people. Then that's different. That's like that goes into the realm of like witchcraft, which I don't think is bad or evil, depending on what you're doing it for. But I think again, people just see something and they're like, oh yeah, that's witchcraft. You can't do it. If you do this, then you're evil and you don't believe in anything. And you just like you don't know someone's heart behind things. So you really shouldn't judge them. That's all I'm saying. Um, but I've had a couple crystals, burned some sage. I still pray and journal and
Yeah.
all of that. So I don't I don't see the issue.
Yeah, I actually know somebody who's a witch. Perfectly lovely person. Um I don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter. I'm not doing it, so whether or not other people do it has nothing to do with me. Uh I don't know if I would because in my mind they don't go together,
Mm-hmm.
but like you said, if there's no ill intent, then maybe. I think what irks me about Christianity sometimes, whether it's another like organized set religion or just a more spiritual type of situation, I do feel like we can acknowledge Christianity might not be the best thing for everyone. I don't think it's the only way to live your life and have a good life and be a good person.
Yeah.
Um, and that's where I struggle. I don't feel a pull to like be a missionary, I guess. If somebody asked me about my faith, I would have no problem talking about it if they expressed they wanted to learn. But like the going around the world and trying to put Christianity on people, I don't get it. And yeah, I do think more Christians should acknowledge like if you want to learn, we're here, but it's really not for everyone.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think another thing that made me stay in the church for so long is actually that idea of like, you're going to go to hell if you leave. Your life is going to be miserable. Everything's going to fall apart. This, that, and the third. And really, like, they instill that fear in you, that your life will be better as a Christian as opposed to not. And the truth of the matter is, like, you're in control of your life. And regardless of whether you're a Christian or you're not, like, you have to make that choice. And that's something that I had to learn. I'm honestly the happiest that I've ever been in life. Just truly like being myself and doing what makes me happy and trying to be a good person and be giving. And so, no, I didn't burn and my life is not miserable.
Yeah. What words of advice or encouragement would you give to other people who might be struggling with their faith or their feelings about church?
Yeah, I think it's really important to find people that you can trust to talk about your feelings with. Um, and also be open to seeing different perspectives that maybe you don't see. And that's not everyone. Be very selective, please. Um, but also at the end of the day, like you have to ask yourself, like, why am I doing this? Why do I want to stay or why do I want to leave? And regardless, are you going to be at peace with whatever decision you decide to make? Yeah, that's the best advice that I can give.
Yeah, because I feel like if you're just going through the motions to get into heaven, you're not going to get in anyway. If you're not like actually believing in it and you're not, fully invested in something that takes up a lot of time and money.
Yeah.
Like, make sure you're happy in it and you believe in it and you're not doing it out of fear that you're going to burn up forever
Yeah.
because you still might if you don't actually believe in the first place. So if you're
And
not going to believe, yeah, you might as well do something that makes you happy.
you're just gonna make yourself sad for no reason. And I spent a lot of time being miserable and reading my Bible every day and talking to people about God and then talking to people about what I've done and what's going on and this, that, and the third, and going to church and different events. Like it was really my life. And I just wasn't happy. Granted, I met some amazing people, and there are people in both of the churches that was a part of that I still genuinely feel are doing things the right way and aren't harming people. But it wasn't really like that for the majority. And it was very damaging to my self esteem and my mental health. And that's just not worth it. Who wants to live a miserable life?
Nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really appreciate you sharing all of that. It's scary to
Yeah.
criticize or to say anything that's not glowing and positive. I'm scared to
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm sure that people are going to have their qualms and judgments about it, but I I'm not trying to be hateful, and I'm not saying like church is terrible and no one should ever go and this, that, and the third. I don't believe that. That's not the truth, but I will share my experiences if it helps someone else.
Yeah. And how do we expect it to get better if we don't say anything? I feel
Yeah.
like anything else that you love, whether it's a person or an institution, you would, note the areas of improvement out of love because you want it to be as good as possible and you want other people to see the goodness that you see. But with the good, there's going to be the bad. And if they can improve, then why wouldn't you say something?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Like if you love someone, if you're in a relationship, like imagine you and your fiance being in this relationship and you do things that each other don't like and you never talk about it and just walk
right.
around on eggshells forever. What?
Mhm. Exactly. It's not healthy. And yeah, yeah, what you said, 100%. If you love something,
Yeah.
you should want it to be the best it can be.
And also, that's biblical too, y'all. Read about it.
Read about it. Okay, can you give us some book recommendations?
Yes, I have a couple. I just finished this book. It's called When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole, and it's a psychological thriller about gentrification, which is very interesting. I read it very quickly, so definitely recommend. My boyfriend gave me the recommendation. It was really
Oh,
good.
you have a boyfriend? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah, he's the keeper. So that's one. And then I have two like more spiritual books as well, that kind of just like helped me. So one is The Shack. And it's kind of about a man who goes through an emotional and spiritual journey after an unfortunate event happens to his family and how he comes out of that. So that one's really good. And then The Alchemist is another one, that's really good. I know a lot of people love it, a lot of people hate it, but I love that book.
People hate it? I didn't
I've
even
heard
know
people
that.
say that they don't like it, but I really liked it. And also, I went to Andalusia, Spain while I was reading the book. So I got to like read
So
it and be
cool.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, last question. What is your dream for your life's work?
Oh, that's difficult. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out my purpose, just like everyone else. But I just want to be able to help and inspire people, especially young girls, young women, and help them just realize that they're not alone and also that they can do whatever they want to do with their lives, regardless of what anyone says. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that may be a cheesy answer, but that's all I got.
No, that's a super, super noble cause. I love working with young girls too. I haven't in a few years, but it's my favorite group to work with. And I think we cannot put too much energy and focus on them. They really need it,
Yeah,
especially
for
the little
sure.
kids now growing up on Instagram,
I
being
cannot
influenced by
imagine. School was so hard. And we grew up like when Instagram first started being a thing, but it wasn't really a thing.
Mhm.
And it wasn't a thing when we were like really young. So I could not imagine the things that these poor kids go through, especially the girls. Girls are so mean.
Girls are so mean and they put so much pressure on themselves, but society puts so much pressure on them.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so difficult. Like we used to be able to be ugly in peace, and now they don't even like get an ugly phase anymore.
It's impossible. You have to look like a model from age 12.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Mhm. Okay. Do you want to plug your Instagrams?
Yeah, so my personal account is underscore Stasia with two A's, underscore Stasia one with two A's. And then my baking Instagram, if you want to see some cooking, baking content, is Stace Bakes.
Your cookies are so good. I
Oh,
need to
thank
get some
you.
more. But yeah, everyone please go follow Stacy. Read the books that she recommended. You can probably, I assume, reach out to her individually if you want
Oh
to
yeah,
talk
for
more
sure.
about religion and your feelings about it or struggles with it, but not with hate. Not with hate. So only from a place of
I'm not
understanding.
responding to any hateful comments.
Thank you guys so much for listening, and I will talk to y'all in a couple weeks. Bye.